Hey, 6th grade, here's your help video for 9.2.2 practice page. We're going to name angles in multiple ways. So on the first page, we have to circle the type of angle and then name it in all 4 ways. So this angle, if we trace what we see here, oops, try that again. We trace across, and we trace, and we go straight up and down. All right, cool. This purple would be a right angle. Right? But because I have to close the distance between the two purples, that means that this is an acute angle. Sometimes I think that it's also kind of like the letter A. If I connect those, see how that kind of looks like an A, right? So that is an acute angle. We can name it in 3 different ways. Way number 1 is to call it angle 6. We're talking about the distance from here to here. See that 6 right there? We can call it angle 6. We can also call it angle Y. Y is right next to the spot where those 2 rays connect. It's the intersection point, it's the vertex. So you might notice that there's also this symbol. This means congruent, or has the same measure. It looks a lot to me like maybe like toothpaste on top of a toothbrush. Right? So it's equals, but in geometry, instead of just using equals, we use congruent when we are comparing things of the same size or measure. All right, so we can call it angle 6. We can call it angle Y. This is one of my favorite ones. We can call it XYZ. Notice that the Y is in the middle because Y is going to be in the middle of these 3 points when we trace them, starting at X to Y to Z. Right? See how we have that angle now traced? So that's the 3rd way. The 4th way is to use the same dots, but do them in the opposite direction. Start at Z, trace to Y, and then up to X. So we'll call that angle. Whoa, that is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Angle ZYX. So we need all 4 ways in each box. So we'll have angle with a number, we'll have angle with a letter, and then we'll have angle with 3 letters. That's what I'm looking for in all of these boxes. Let's check the next one. This angle looks really wide. Again, if you wanted a 90-degree angle, it would be a perfect square corner. And I can see that now that I have a 90-degree angle, I have to make the distance between these 2 purples, I have to make it wider. So now we're talking about all of this space, different highlight here, all of this space in between, right? So that is definitely wider than 90 degrees. So we would call this an obtuse angle. Okay, so we have some different ways that we can label this angle. We can call it B to C to D. That's this one. We can call it D to C to B. That's this one here on the end. We can call it angle C. Do you see how it's right there next to the arc? So we can call it angle C. And the last thing that we can call it is that number that's right there next to the arc. So that's number 3. Cool. We're going to do exactly one more. This angle is a right angle. We know because it's got this little square. Without that square, we can say maybe it's a right angle if it's really close. But with this square, it means that it is exactly 90 degrees. Okay, so let's look at our options down here. Things that we already know, things that we have already traced. Get that cool pink color, right? Here's YXW, Y to X to W. Okay. Here is WXY, W to X to Y. Right, ooh, angle something, Right, then angle 9 there by the vertex, by the intersection, and X is on the other side, so we could also call this angle X. Right, your job is to finish the front side, and then the back side is one of my favorite assignments of the entire year. I love helping kids with this. Right, it's a little bit tricky for me to do on a PDF because my protractor wants to move around. This is called a protractor. You saw it in the video. Right? when you are using a protractor, you need to find this spot right there, right? Kind of reminds me of a scope when I'm playing video games that have shooting in it, right? So that spot right there has to go right on top of the vertex of the intersection point. Not close to, not kind of sort of near, it's got to go exactly on top of it, right? So I'm going to move it in just a moment, but the other thing I want you to see is that we are going to make an angle that is exactly 60 degrees, which tells me that I really want an acute angle. That's going to be important when we move the protractor. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to move it so the dot by the H perfectly matches. I also want you to see, get it off this text here, that when I zoom in, this line goes right through both 0 and 180. Do you see that? That ray there? It has to be lined up there. And this dot, this intersection point, has to be where the two lines cross in your protractor. Okay, now we're going to look for 60 degrees, and here's the problem that we're going to have. There's a 60 degrees right here. If I make a tick mark, so I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to make a mark right at 60 degrees, okay? Then I move my protractor. Oh no, it's not going to let me do that. Let's try this one more time. Maybe if I just make it sort of near it, it'll work. Okay, that's about the best I can do. You'll be able to get a little bit closer on your assignment. Nope, still not going to work. Okay, if I make this line here down to the H, do you see that what we really have is this angle here? This is not an acute angle. It's gigantic. It's bigger than 90 degrees. So this is an obtuse angle, which means we went to the wrong 60 degrees. If you're not carefully looking, there's another 60 degrees right here. This one makes more sense because we want an acute angle. We want one that's less than 90. So now I'm going to start at my H and follow up all the way through the 60. It's a little bit trickier, right? But I want you to see that the 60 and the 120 match, because 60 plus 120 equals 180, right? So they match, and you have to be thinking what logically makes more sense. It makes a lot more sense to use this 60, because when we do, then we have this smaller angle, this acute angle, this angle that is less than 90 degrees. I want you to see that we have gone through the number 1 right there. It's number 1. And the vertex was H. So down on the bottom, you're going to find the number 1, and you're going to write an H. You need to do this for every problem. I will help you if you get stuck. I've got lots of protractors in the room. It just takes some practice and takes some thinking.